Hi, this is the overview of the New York City Speaks Community Conversation Toolkit. We will run down how to use this guide and where to find information. Before we get started, want to ensure that collectively, through this project and process, we shape the future of New York City. New York City Speaks is an opportunity to bring together neighbors, families, friends, community members to host community conversations and dig deeper in terms of the priorities, the perspectives, the policy ideas that community members have that could be elevated to the new administration. So whether that conversation is a 30-minute discussion over a meal with friends or a 90-minute discussion online or in person with community folks, this is an opportunity to host an event, share your notes that came out of that, and then see your voice make a difference. So the contents here of the toolkit are as follows. There's 4 different components of the toolkit, and I will review where to find this information, at the same time, what's in it. So in terms of the introduction folder or bucket, we have information on what is New York City Speaks. That's a 1-pager in terms of giving the summary of what the project is. What are the community conversations? Again, a summary in terms of what are the community conversations and then how to get started. Then there's another section here, how to use this toolkit, and that gives you a breakdown of what's in the toolkit, and then what are some conversation formats, whether that's in person or virtual, and those are all here outlined in this toolkit. In terms of planning, the planning bucket includes invitations, for participants, all the outreach materials that you'll need, tools to reminders of what to bring in order to prepare for the conversation, right? The preparation materials, and then assigning roles and what does that look like? Conversation topics to which that you will choose from. Those are also outlined here in this bucket. And then hosting a community conversation, there's a suggested agenda, the facilitation and note-taking tips, and as well as the facilitation guide. And lastly, the last bucket here is report back on next steps. These are the instructions on how to upload the notes from the conversations, and short information in terms of how the data would be used, and then when you can expect to hear back from the New York City Speaks team. So for introduction, like I mentioned, what is New York City Speaks? This is a 1-pager that outlines the process. And New York City Speaks is an engagement process for New Yorkers to inform the policies and priorities of the new administration. And again, this is to shape the future of our city as a collective. And so this public-private partnership between the city and philanthropy and community-based organizations, this is an opportunity really to elevate and magnify a lot of the information that we've heard multiple times in our communities, and want to make sure that it's elevated and grounded in data. So what are community conversations? As you may be aware, the New York City Speaks survey was deployed a couple of months ago, and we received 62,000 responses. And so out of these 62,000 responses, there were a couple of data points that we want to ground truth and ensure that there's deeper conversations that are had, either for folks that participate in the survey and have more to share, and or folks that didn't get to participate in the survey and still have ideas to share. So the community conversations are designed to, again, explore the impacts of the most popular ideas of the New York Speaks survey, and then identify some strategies to bring those ideas to life. For precedent, the New York City Speaks team has done this before in Miami, and so there's information here that you can read, and in this green link will take you to that website in terms of to show you what materials they put together. Here's a timeline of the community conversation. we are still in the process of deploying these conversations, especially through the month of April. And then in May, all that data that is collected, from the notes and in the conversations, will be analyzed. And then the New York City Speaks team will share the new priorities, policies, and programs that reflect the needs of everyday New Yorkers with the administration throughout the months of May and June. So to get started, to find all the materials in this guide, you would click this link and it would take you to the folder. So this would take you to this folder here. And in this folder, you'll see the invitation materials, civic education sheets, conversation guide, and the report back. So the invitation materials, you click on this folder, this will be where you'll find your email template, the outreach folder, the outreach flyer, the phone script, in case you want to call your participants and invite them over the phone. Here are it's a quick script that you can rely on. And it gives you a little bit of a flavor in terms of what you can say. Here's an outreach folder, a flyer, and the social media posts, in case you do want to post on social media, you can, asking and inviting people to join a conversation. And here is many different ways in which you can use these social media posts. Okay, so that is here. All right, how to use this toolkit. So what's in the toolkit, as mentioned, as I showed you in the folder, you would click this link here, or anything that is in green ink that's highlighted is a hyperlink. So if I want the invitation materials, for instance, I can click on this link and it would take me to the invitation materials folder. That's also another way you can do it. So going to how to use this toolkit. So what's in the toolkit, invitation materials, everything from email templates, phone scripts, social media posts, outreach flyers, as I just outlined. In terms of the civic education sheets, this is information that is helpful to build the knowledge of how city government works. And that includes information on New York City Speaks, right? The one pager on New York City Speaks, city government roles and powers, the City Budget 101, strategic plans, tools for civic engagement. And so what that looks like, if I were to click on this link, it would take me here, and then I can click here. And so the City Budget 101, in top information in terms of how it works. So everything from the preliminary budget and how the council analysis and hearings take place, to what it's like to produce an executive budget and hearing, right? And then to adopt the budget. So all that breakdown is here. And in terms of who's involved, who are the parties, who are the stakeholders that are involved in city budget and making the city budget function and accountable for the city. These are the folks: community boards, city council, borough president, comptroller, and public advocate, and others. And in terms of participatory budgeting, this is a democratic process. And then we also have it outlined here. And this is just, again, information for community partners, participants to know what's out there. This is information for them to keep, to rely on. Similarly, the city government roles and powers document here is answering questions, right? So what is city government responsible for? And here it's responsible for public education, correctional institutions, public safety, sanitation, water supplies, welfare services, and more. And so this is a breakdown of the roles of each of the, for example, of even the mayor, Eric Adams, what's his role, the comptroller, the public advocate, the borough presidents, like what are their roles, the city council, what do they do? And so that's all outlined here. In terms of strategic planning, what is New York City's strategic plan? And so it gives you a little short blurb in terms of what the plan is, and it's really it's really a plan to guide the city's priorities and decision-making processes, and really to address not only the current challenges, but also future challenges that are foreseeable. And so these are kind of, this is information on what it is in terms of strategic planning and how to find it and what to look for. So here are some information on the strategic plan for the city. And here are some tools for civic engagement, you know, using the Green Book or finding the neighborhood precinct. Like, how do I do these things? If a participant really wanted to, for example, attend a public hearing, what does that look like? If I were to click this link, it will redirect and it will take me to the city council page. So for example, if I am really interested in understanding for what the mayor's community affairs unit does and how can I contact them, I can also click that and it will take me to the page. This is a useful information. And again, as a reminder, anything in this green text that's underlined is a hyperlink to the websites for that particular information that you're looking for. This is a one-pager on New York City Speaks here. And that's the civic education sheets. Now, in terms of the community, the conversation guides and materials, this folder here will help you facilitate a community conversation, and it includes facilitation guide for either an in-person event or a virtual event. It has a report back sheet, and then it also contains the topic data sheets and activity sheets, even the note-taking template that you would need. So this folder here are all the materials that you would need for the conversation to take place. And this is what it looks like. In the facilitation guide, sign-in sheets, and the topic info sheets and activity sheets. So here you'll have the in-person event guide, the virtual event guide, in case you have decided which one. For virtual conversation, you use this one. For in-person, you'll use this one. And this is a report back sheet that you would use after the conversation, to summarize the conversation in your small group. And so this is a very helpful tool to summarize, because you can use this to form a sentence, right? In terms of, I'm speaking because and you put in your neighborhood, when we talk about, the conversation topic, we want to prioritize and whatever ideas came out because, and then the impacts that you discussed. So for example, I'm speaking because in Bed-Stuy, that's the neighborhood, for example, that we're talking about, when we talk about public safety, and that's the conversation topic we chose, we want to prioritize greater sanitation because there's too much garbage that doesn't get picked up daily, and it's impacting children and the elderly. And that is something that, let's say, that's an example that came out of your small group. This is what you would use to capture that, and then use a volunteer someone in your small group to share back to the larger group. Just again, some helpful tools. Okay. Now the report back instructions are, the report back instruction here is, so the report back instructions, data entry instructions, this is where you would use this link to, here you can click on this link, and this is the link, that's the link that you would use to upload, to capture everything that you're doing, right? So the name of your organization, the person that's completing this, contact information, the neighborhood that your conversation took place, when it took place, whether it was virtual or in person, how many people attended the conversation. This is where you would upload your sign-in sheets and the photos taken, as well as the data, the note-taking template. So that's where you would also upload here. And these are the instructions for how to do that. And then if there's any questions that you have regarding information about the, uploading information, then you would just send a quick email to hello@newyorkcityspeaks.org. So conversation formats, as mentioned before, there's virtual and in person. And here's an outline of the materials that you'll need, the roles that you will need to set up for that conversation. Here are some planning and checklists. So for example, inviting participants, and then you would use all the materials here. And again, these green, anything in the green text that's underlined is going to take you to the folder. So if you want an outreach folder, you would click here and it would take you directly to an outreach flyer, and then you would can use that. Preparing materials and assigning roles. So this is for in-person conversations. This is a breakdown of what you will need, and you can check this off as you go. So for example, print out the in-person sign-in sheet. So if you were to click here, it would take you to the sign-in sheet. That's what you would print. And then all of a sudden you can check this box once it's printed. And that will keep you on track. Similarly, for virtual conversations, it'll tell you what you have, what you need here. These are the conversation topics. So for example, if we want to have a conversation about civic engagement, it would take me to the civic engagement folder where I would find the activity sheets for the conversation, the civic engagement data profile, right? The info sheet on civic engagement. And this data here is asking, answering the question, the city is exploring creating a centralized app and website to make it easier for residents to engage with city services. Which services would you like to see included? So when New Yorkers were asked which services would they like to see included in the centralized app, the top 3 responses were housing resources, which is like how to apply for affordable housing, health resources, how to acquire Medicaid and Medicare, worker rights and services, so filling out complaints about workplace conditions. And then this is the breakdown of the priorities citywide. So green represents the top priority, and that is why you see so much green in this map. And so you can see all the breakdowns. So in Staten Island, in pockets of Flushing and Staten Island, for example, taxes, like how to fill out your taxes is a resource that they would want to see represented in this app, centralized app. Now, when we look at the New York City Speaks survey, which is the adult survey, versus the New York City Speaks youth survey, which it was administered to New Yorkers ages 14 to 17. And when asked the question, what changes would make it easier for you to participate in civic engagement opportunities organized by city government? The adults mentioned transparency and accountability with city decision-making, and citywide plan guided by community input for specific topics such as housing, jobs, health, education, transportation, and then real-time response for 311. Whereas the New York City youth ranked this or answered this question, and their top responses were a citywide plan guided by community input, more opportunities for community to decide how to spend city money, and then more information on how the city works and makes decisions. So I think even for answering this question of more information on how the city works and makes decisions, these civic education sheets could be helpful to some of the youth, or could be helpful to just participants in general. So sharing that in advance is also recommended. And then you would kind of share this data and say, does this data feel right to you based on your lived experience? What's one thing you agree with and one thing you disagree with when looking at this data? And the note taker would capture it here. This is a note-taking template. And this is a Google Doc where the note taker can completely fill this out on their laptop or a computer. And then when we ask what is one thing you agree with and one thing you disagree with the data, the note taker would capture all of what's being said here. And the questions, what are the top 2 ideas that would make the biggest change in your life and community? And the impacts of how would this idea impact you would all be captured here. But what I do want to bring your attention to is that after you show this data, these are the activity sheets. And these questions are the same on the note-taking template. It is helpful to print this activity sheet and have it on the table so that people can start thinking about what their responses would be. If you have the opportunity to print the activity sheet in a poster size, to leave it on tables and then have people kind of fill it in with Post-its, that would also be recommended, but that's not necessarily needed to have a fruitful conversation. The conversation, what's helpful is to share the data, right? Share this data and ask and start the purpose of sharing this data is to spark conversation. And so that is what the activity is all about. Okay. So hosting a community conversation. Here is a suggested agenda. We recommend 15 minutes just for settling in, welcoming, making introductions in the small groups, using the materials that you would need. Here's the sign-in sheet, the civic education sheets that would be circulated before the conversation. The civic education sheets are the sheets that people can take home with them. So I would print these out and have them available. The 45-minute we've suggested for the conversation topics and those discussions to occur. So you would click on the conversation topic folder, and that would take you to the folder I shared earlier, and that would give you the data sheet, the activity sheet, and the note-taking document. Then if you have time and interest to have another conversation about another topic, then you would repeat the same structure and allow 45 minutes for that conversation to happen. Then, in terms of the report backs, this report back sheet is the one that we talked about earlier, and that's what you would use to have the participants share what they discussed in their small groups with each other. So we also have some facilitation tips. I trust that a lot of you already know how to facilitate and facilitate well. But for those of you that are a little bit new or just need a refresher in terms of some grounding rules and things to keep in mind, you have that here, some tips and tricks. Note-taking tips are also here for the note takers. The facilitation guide, you never have to feel pressured to read the script or ask the questions verbatim. So we want to encourage you all to use your own flair and flavor, to feel free to use your own words and be natural. And remember, this is a conversation. So we don't want this to be super structured, but we do want this to be an opportunity to spark interest, to spark this dialogue amongst community partners, and really see what sticks out. So here are some tips in terms of as people are settling in, and maybe having an icebreaker question in terms of how long have you lived in the neighborhood, or what connects you to this neighborhood, or you feel free to ask your own icebreaker questions, but it's really just an opportunity for everybody to kind of get outside their comfort zone. We have some language here. Anything in the green text is like scripted language, and so this is language that we would say would be helpful for you all to have in your back pocket, but feel free to do your own introductions. But here you go. So this is the conversation topic activity. This is what the overview of the topics and how to kind of make that conversation flow. That's continued. And so the report back and next steps. And again, you would use this link, and this link will take you to here to upload your information. And that is the New York City's, an overview of the New York City Speaks Community Conversation Toolkit.